Welcome back to the Film Steins, the double feature podcast. Join us as we unravel the interwoven experience of the continuous conversation of cinema. Take part in pairing movies with their cursed counterparts, movies that share DNA, or even pairing questionable duos by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/filmsteins. We offer tiers at the $1, $5, and $20 level, where the $5 tier will grant the ability to request films to further the discussion. So grab some popcorn, sit back, and get ready to join the 100-year conversation. This is the Film Steins, where movies are more than just entertainment, they're an experience.
They're an experience
all around you. And welcome back to another episode of the Film Steins. Thank you guys for joining us today. Today I am joined by my truther friend, Lucy.
Truther? Like one who truths?
Yes.
Hello, everyone.
Remember, you can join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for brand new episodes of the Film Steins. Some recent episodes include Blue Ruin, Arthur the King, Next Goal Wins, the original Karate Kid, and the anime movie sensation, Your Name. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Go rate us on Apple Podcasts. Come subscribe for $1. Come write in. Come request a movie. Flubber, the original Lion King.
Flubber? The original Lion King?
We appreciate all the support. Thank you guys very much.
Are you stressed and filled with anxiety like I am? Maybe in a bit of pain from that car accident you had a few years ago? Well, the sponsor of today's episode, Hempville CBD, has us covered. They have the highest quality products created by chemists and doctors. Hempville carries everything from CBD to THC dispensary grade without those despicable dispensary prices. Order your Delta 8, 9 edibles and vapes along with the THCA flower and get free shipping when you spend $50 or more at hempvillecbd.com. Check out the link in the description for more details.
But today we will be discussing the 1988 sensation Katsuhiro Otomo's seminal film, Akira. Is Your Name the Akira of today? Has anyone asked that question before?
Yeah, I don't know, because today we have so much animation out there that it's not as pioneering as Akira is in 88.
That's fair, yeah. Well, this was my first time watching this movie. I believe it was yours as well.
Yep.
And I do believe it's a similar victim to the time as something like Mario 64 or the Matrix films, where time and place was very important in 1988, perhaps especially for people in Japan, dealing with the boom of the meteoric economic growth and boom in technology and cultural staying power in the entire world. Very significant time in Japan. Akira is not very good, but it has some really cool things going on in it. Of course, we watched it subbed, so writing is hard to question. But even still, there's not a lot of characterization or dynamics of real note. Everything feels like an excuse to investigate the amoeba metaphor, more or less, on the back of also what was happening in the 1980s in Japan with the boom of technology and the crazy economic growth, and the self-reflection of Japan's place within themselves and in the greater picture. And obviously the most significant kind of impact on the medium, because this is no storytelling powerhouse, right? But the animation is on, to this day, a completely different level. But I will start off by asking you, name the one movie this reminded me of. That movie wished it was more like this. I think I said that before.
I don't know.
The Warriors. This reminded me a lot of The Warriors.
Okay.
And I just kept thinking, man, The Warriors thought it was this, in its own right. Of course, The Warriors is kind of bad. Like, just front to back to center, side to side. No matter how you look at The Warriors, it's a bad movie. Akira, at the lowest rung, is a very interesting movie, at the very least. Akira was a very significant movie in 1988, sort of like Your Name was in 2016 or 17 or whenever it came out. And I know you loved Your Name, but did you love Akira? Not that they share that much in common.
Yeah, they don't share much in common.
They come out of Japan they're both loved.
Maybe besides confusing me.
Oh, that's fair, yeah.
But that's that's just the me thing. But it was good. I didn't love it like I thought I would because it felt very chaotic and grungy, which I tend to like those movies because they have something to say or some plot twist or some cleverness behind them. But this didn't have that. There's a lot of moving pieces and it wasn't very focused or as focused as I think it should have been with all its themes it was giving us. Because there was a lot going on here. You had friendship and teenagers and all this destruction. Then you throw in gang rivalry. And then we throw in rebellion and government and power. And then also the other side of it, the power and technology and human experimentation, all squished into 2 hours. Which would have been fine if they would have found a way to make all these topics flow together. Because, yeah, you can throw in some of this gang rivalry with youth, with friendship. We've seen that done many times. But how often do you see that mixed with human experiments? Like, no, not that I can think of off the top of my head. But this movie didn't quite do that. It felt a bit too long. It had some pacing issues that I'm not sure if it was because of the animation at the time. We were limited to how many pictures we saw per second. I don't really know what you call that in the animation world. So if that felt a little dragged out in that sense, because I have a similar feeling watching Dragon Ball, the original, not Z, not Super, but Dragon Ball from the 80s. It just feels a little lagged, so to speak. So I don't know if that's what I was experiencing here, because some of the animation here gave me Dragon Ball vibes. But I did like the animation, and I was also very surprised by how much gore this film had. I also liked our main character here. I wish we would have focused on him more or elaborated on him, because I felt that we got some of his personality, but just not enough of it to make his character like stand out like a Goku or, you know, a Luffy. Because he kind of gave me those vibes, those like free-spirited, kind of dumb character, but not anywhere like Goku and Luffy, because he has a temper and he... But there was just something missing in this movie that kept it from being an awesome movie, because all the animation and everything on screen looked really good. And even the score was very good.
Yeah, I think you're noticing that kind of too big for its britches kind of thing, similar to what a lot of adapted books and video games find themselves in. That being hitting all the high and maybe some of the low notes of the source material, but missing the completeness of the bigger message.
Yeah, it's almost like one of those situations where this should have been a series.
Certainly. And the great irony in that is it would have served the story a little bit more, but we would have lost that level of animation, because animated series just don't have the time and budget to spend like some of these higher budget feature length animated films can demand. As we've stated many, many times, and we will continue to, film demands this focus, demands this tunnel vision to some degree. And when you have such a culturally charged film at a culturally explosive moment in time, it might be a little hard to contain in any sensible way. So a movie would have a hard time serving whatever that is any justice. But there are a lot of things I like about this movie, apart from the animation. Animation's sick. I love the 80s, early 90s animation of anime, and especially like original Dragon Ball. One of the major things that was lacking was probably the characterization of the dynamics and the actual characters with Kaneda and Tetsuo. We didn't get a lot of texture between them, on them. I feel like we got this big, weird twist of characterization and exposition at a really terrible time as far as storytelling goes, when Tetsuo was yelling at Kaneda about parenting him and being his kind of superior all his life.
Yeah, why are you always trying to protect me?
That felt like it was a little out of left field. I was like, I mean, there's obviously some history here. I've got that you guys grew up with each other, but there was not enough relationship built here for any of this explosive energy.
Yeah, because Tetsuo gets taken so early on in the film that we lose any interaction they have together. We do get some flashbacks of their childhood and them sticking up for each other, but that's pretty much it.
And in a movie setting, it's always too little too late because we're racing towards that 2-hour finish line. In a series, you could have had several seasons, potentially, to flesh that out. Like Naruto and Sasuke, I guess. Or the weird relationship Goku and Vegeta have.
The bromance.
The bromance. One thing I liked about their presence was this focus on them being so-called rebels or people without kids without purpose, without any order and structure in their life. They go to school? What was the school they were going to? Was that some kind of discipline school?
Well, Tetsuo got dropped off by his parents, so the parents didn't want him. So these are like orphans.
Yeah, which is a big deal in the 1980s in Japan, and still is to this day, the foster care system, where rejected kids are rejected by the entire system of the culture, including government, family, social.
So they get shunned from society.
So they get shunned from society, and they oftentimes end up not totally unheard of in other foster care systems. They jump from different households and institutions constantly until they're of age, and then they have such little preparation for society and adulthood that they're hooligans. You know, they're unable to kind of conform and forge their own path. And we see a really dramatic kind of Big Brother-esque take on this, I think, with Tetsuo being basically taken from his family to another institution where he is probably very comfortable in to some degree because it's very familiar, to be experimented on, and was probably, for all we know, experimented on in the last one because of the world we live in, this Neo-Tokyo. But one thing I really like about this is the duality of the explosive nature of technology and how infectious the West was on Japan, and Japan having to adjust to this inevitable future of working with the West and becoming a major player.
I like that you bring up this point because I was thinking about the introduction of the film, and it starts off with this nuke in 1988. That's the start of World War III. Fast forward to 2019, and this is where this Neo-Tokyo movie takes place. And you don't find out until later on in the film that the explosion was caused by Akira. And I'm still not exactly sure what Akira is, or at least what it's supposed to symbolize, besides this kid that is all powerful. Because I was stuck on it being called World War III. But you saying something about this Western influence is now making me think about that.
It's a good point, what you're saying, because as a culture, the growing pains that came with adjusting to working and succeeding with the West rings true with me, and being on some level as difficult as the effects of World War II. Because there seems to be this emphasis on this culture-wide focus of finding one's place, but one as in an entire ecosystem of people. And so there's just a significant level of change that indicates to me that the representation of the World War III bombing is a symbol of that pain.
Yeah, definitely. Because at no point in the movie were other countries even mentioned at all. So calling it a world war really threw me off. Especially if Akira caused it. It's like, what? Wait, what? There's gotta be something else that I'm not thinking about here, because that's crazy. What are you saying?
It's because their world is going upside down.
Yeah, exactly.
So Akira, the entity, on some level represents literally what it means, which is truth. but specifically in that which was previously thought as truth was wrong, or at least led down a more questionable path. And so Akira was this correction, but also handed these godlike tools to amoeba-like people.
So Akira is the evolution of mankind?
Akira is this explosive acceleration into modernity. In the movie, Akira is this fear that the inability to adapt is going to be the death of us, but specifically Japan, because this is a very Japanese movie.
Yeah.
And so the film is ultimately a cautionary tale of what happens to a society that's been handed these tools and is unable to adapt. And so they lose all sense of order, while also having this kind of dualistic story of Tetsuo going through the exact same experience, but as an individual, being handed these tools to become a godlike figure, and even also getting his destructive power when left undisciplined and unreflective, while also acting as a whole, this movie that is, as an explosive expression of the individual, kind of decoupling itself from traditional Japanese society and being the final embrace of that 1980s explosive economy. And
I like that you say that, because if we have this comparison here with Tetsuo, and he gets these like splitting headaches and all these hallucinations, and he's just being tortured this whole time. It's funny you making that comparison, that's how Japan felt with these growing pains, I guess. These power pains, which that was pretty cool to see. I don't know how often we have hallucinations in animated films, especially some that look as gnarly as that. And then we also have these scenes with the other ESP kids playing mind games with him and his actual hallucinations. That was pretty cool to see. There's one plot point that I didn't understand, and I don't know how much it matters, but why was Takashi being taken or helped by the resistance? I don't know. Wiki made it sound like he had escaped with the aid of the resistance, but in the movie they use the word abducted, which to me that means taken in a forceful way. So I wasn't sure if that was like a good thing us, the audience, wanted, or if it was a bad thing. I wasn't sure whose side to be on, really.
Yeah, I don't know why they were after him. I think this is one of those things that the manga might help us with, but falls completely short in the film. It makes me think the government, this military dictatorship kind of thing going on, is afraid of modernity, afraid of modern technology, doesn't understand it, which we see all the time on even a micro level with the individual. Go ask your grandparents what they think a video game is. They're going to say Pac-Man or Mario or something.
Not my grandma. She's hip.
You got a hip grandma.
I got a hip grandma.
She's playing that Fortnite.
I bet you she does not play Fortnite, but I bet you she's into the mobile games. That helps explain some of these political issues that I just wasn't really getting, because we have this scene where we have political figures, including the colonel, I don't know his name, just the military guy, and they're all discussing the budget and how this budget is going to waste with the crime that's going on in the city, and how they need to handle that money better. And someone suggests, let's invest that money into the Olympics, and this other guy says, no, let's invest that money into welfare, and everyone like boos him. And then the colonel guy is like, no, let's invest this money into securing Akira, or whatever his plan was, but Akira related. And everyone gets pissed at him and they insult him and say, hey, what kind of military guy are you? Like, what the heck?
Yeah, and I took that as him trying to protect us from ourselves kind of thing. Because these others are trying to evolve and figure out what society and what governance looks like in a modern sense. And I love the presence of the Olympics, because there's obviously this sign of like worldly unity in that. But like you said, we don't get an indication of other countries in any form.
And how are you going to host the Olympics in this really crime-ridden town, crime-ridden city? That's just crazy to hear. Like, excuse me, did you not look out the window?
The presence of the Olympics kind of only furthers my thought on Neo-Tokyo and Japan's urgentness to adjust and become part of the West. But the significance of our emphasis on the colonel and his governance feeling much more totalitarian and you do as I say and you're going to be cool with that is basically the symbolism of this kind of rabid, desperate dog that's a dying breed.
Yeah, because we have that scene almost after that budget issue meeting they had where the politician dudes, I don't know what kind of governance they have here, but the politicians dude basically ordered the colonel to stop, and if he doesn't, they were going to have to murder him. And then he tells one of his men to murder the other guy, and they shoot him, and then one guy shoots back. And I was like, oh my god, what's about to happen? But he stops it. He's like, no, don't let it continue. This man really wants to save the world, and he's one of the last ones there at the end fight.
It almost makes me feel like the colonel is aware of the Amoeba metaphor, and that these very modern tools, this explosive technology and these more interconnected resources to grow on an individualistic basis are in people's hands more so than ever and only is growing. But he's like a parent in that he's afraid of what they're going to end up doing, what they're going to do to themselves. How are they going to treat one another? Because they're just amoebas. They can't deal with these tools. And I love that element of storytelling. It's the only good bit of storytelling, I think, in this movie is when the little gremlin girl, Kyoko, I think her name is, where she's going on this bit about Tetsuo being the amoeba, being handed these tools of godlike power, but not realizing the level of power that he's just been handed. So he's only going to further his own human, lowly motives until some kind of reflection happens. But like I was kind of saying earlier, she's actually talking about Japan as a whole. Japan's the amoeba being handed these godlike tools of varying powers with its new and improved technology and its acceleration into the Western ideal. And from Katsuhiro's perspective is most certainly a path of destruction and chaos. Because only Tetsuo made it out. Everyone else is still having to deal with the same old business as usual. Crime every day, getting their buildings broken into. Nothing changed in the world, except Tetsuo transcended in the godhood.
What were the capsules? Was that supposed to represent something? Because they were the capsule gang, and Kaneda had a giant-ass capsule on his jacket back. And we hear it throughout the film a little bit, and especially at the end when Tetsuo goes down to the club, I don't know, the place where the film starts out at, where they all hang out, and demands some capsules. So I wasn't sure if they represented anything.
No, they most certainly do, just like the clowns do too. The clown gang. That'd be your gang. There's this big emphasis on counterculture, and with what comes with counterculture is the use of drugs. The capsules obviously represented just drug use. We saw it itself, and that was running rampant in the 1980s in Japan. The clowns were this extreme representation of nonconformity.
This whole town is an extreme.
Yeah, certainly.
I know I mentioned earlier that this is very Dragon Ball vibes, especially with the death and gore, but I love that it took it one more level and showed us this carnage. You saw bits and pieces of people exploding on the screen like you would see in a non-animated movie. I loved it. I was really surprised by the amount of detail that went into that. I don't know why I think 88, and I don't think super detailed anime. I just think blobs in the ground that represent a tree or something, you know? But one of my favorite gory moments was when that guy got run over by a motorcycle in the very beginning.
Yeah, that was awesome.
It was awesome. And you can very easily miss it if you blink or look away for just a split second. But I loved it. I loved that amount of detail. I loved when he shot those dogs and the dogs like fell back and whimpered and there's blood everywhere. And that little kid saw the dead dog next to him with blood splattered on his windshield. I mean, it was insane. And I also loved all the detail within the city. I mean, the buildings looked good. There was this like sort of holographic advertisement of a restaurant. I wasn't sure what it was. And that looked pretty cool. I think at a bar, there was like a giant beer on the top of the building. It was awesome. But the one that stood out to me the most was probably the statue that was in front of their school. And I actually had to go back for this one because it was so brief. But when you pause on it, this statue has like a bra where the bust of the statue is. And there's like a noose tied around the neck. I wasn't sure who the statue was of. Probably the founder of the school or something. I don't know. Or the current dictator. I don't know. But it was hilarious. It was all graffitied and shit. There were like nails on his head. I mean, it was crazy. And the characters themselves were pretty detailed. I wasn't confused on who was supposed to be which character. You know, Tetsuo was obviously the guy with the big forehead. Kaneda looked iconic. You know who he is. You can probably tell who he is now if you saw a picture of him. However, I didn't like that the Colonel, Caillou, and another character I don't know looked the same to me. They weren't given as much love as the other characters obviously were. I don't know if it's because how much can you differentiate big guys with mustaches and big muscles and a crew-like haircut? Do they all look the same to everybody? I guess so. But that was just the one little bit that I wish we would have emphasized a little more, because I did get confused at one point whether the Colonel was part of the resistance. I was like, wait, is he really with Kay? And what is going on? But no, it wasn't. It was complete different characters. I also noticed that the girls weren't super sexualized, and we kept them with the style and aesthetic of the movie. I kind of like that. Not that I don't mind, sexualized anime girls. Everyone loves them. But I just liked that we kept it realistic here. We kept the realistic proportions. We gave them clothing to their own styles. We didn't give them these big eyes or these big eyelashes to know that they're girls. I mean, even at one point, I wasn't too sure whether Kay was a girl or a boy until Kaneda started hitting on her. I was like, oh, okay. Because she dressed like a dude. So that was cool. I don't know if I've seen that in anime.
Yeah, you're hitting on one of the very sad realities of animation. Most animated feature films, series, over the last, 30 years, are just made by less talented people.
Damn. You said that.
And you're also hitting on one of the very significant reasons why Akira will always be remembered. Apart from its cultural significance to its homeland, it's always going to be this watermark in animation that's still chaste. Name one 2D animated Disney movie, from the 90s especially, late 80s, that walks similar ground, that has these kind of detailed backgrounds, that has this amount of style and personality and how characters move and all these little particle effects. Disney movies are famous for having very beautiful, oftentimes, but just very muted and watercolor-esque backgrounds.
Yeah. It's like a splash of blue and then a squiggle that resembles a car or something.
And those are the guys you probably should focus on as far as like the ones having that budget to achieve something like this, if that's what they want to achieve. Obviously, things like Dragon Ball and these other series from the time and even now have no budget compared to things like this, or maybe the new Demon Slayer movie or something. But I mean, you can see it in the animation and the art style. There's a reason that all these look so cookie cutter and these big eyes and the hairs and stuff. And a lot of these, you could probably take 100 random anime and show them to someone who's not super familiar with anime, but is relative, kind of in the, maybe seen 4 or 5, haven't seen hundreds or anything kind of category, and ask them to group which animes are of the same show, when in reality, none of them are of the same show. It's the test. I guarantee you'd be a little disappointed to find out that your favorite anime is kind of ugly.
I mean, there's some truth there, because for the longest time, and I'm about to embarrass myself, I thought the Kakashi lookalike from Jujutsu Kaisen, or whatever that anime is called, I haven't seen it, I know nothing of it, I thought that was Kakashi. I was like, wait, what? Did we lose the eye cover? Like, what is going on here? He looks just the same. And I love Naruto. And I love Kakashi. He's my favorite character. But I hate to say it, they look similar.
Yeah, the art style is nothing to write home about. Versus something like Dragon Ball, there's not many animes that are as unique looking as Dragon Ball.
Yeah.
Especially from a series point of view. Which I've always been a little why about, because when you look at some of these mangas, the art in those is insane sometimes. And it doesn't seem to translate to its show. Like One Piece, for example. I think One Piece's manga's art looks very cool. It's very stylized. It's very cartoony, which is my favorite thing about it. But in the show, it loses some of that, or all of it, I should say. And it feels, for the most part, I feel like it has kind of decoupled itself from normal anime because of how cartoony it is, which is to its benefit because there's not a lot of that level of cartooniness in anime. But that's the sole reason I don't like watching anime too, is the art style, because it's also similar.
Oh, no, you can't say that.
I'm just like, what is this one? What is this?
Oh, no, you can't. Not just because of the art style.
But saying all that, Akira just really puts so much stuff to shame. It's actually pretty sad. Specifically, feature films with the budgets and yada yada. Even things like Your Name, where we have this emphasis on art style and there's this slice of lifeness in its nature, it's hand-drawn, yada yada. Lots of characterization to the animation, though. The literal locomotion of our characters and stuff. Something we don't have here, which was probably unheard of, really, at the time. I wouldn't imagine a character covering their mouth while they chew up a worm and spit it in a cup.
Chewing rice.
Rice, whatever.
Yeah, and the photorealistic nature of Your Name was awesome. Especially when we saw some of the buildings that are true to the area.
But in Akira, we do have this emphasis on style and coolness. Hate to say it, because there's almost this surrealistic nature to like the landscapes of like, oh well, that could never really work in that way. There's no rhyme or reason to the architecture kind of thing, but obviously it works. Yeah, we don't have to make the girls super cute or super sexual to make it work. Like, even that scene where, was it the cop that ripped off her blouse and, like, it exposed her? Even that scene, like, you just felt for her then and felt just bad for her, really, without making it, like, a sexual moment for this girl. Like, she just got abused here. Yeah, I wonder which anime inspired that chase for so-called fan service and this emphasis on these like crash zoom shots of boobs and butt or under skirt shots. I wonder what anime started that.
Dragon Ball? I don't know.
Maybe.
Because we have a lot of sexualizing Bulma from Goku's point of view. Like, hey, Bulma, where's your tail? And he pats her in her private areas.
Which is funny because he's basically an animal.
Yeah, he is an animal.
So maybe we just ran with that in the other direction. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Because then you have Master Roshi, who's a perv, and he watches exercise tapes.
Yeah, but he's there in the beginning to balance Goku in that way. I get that. And I love him for his perviness, but
There's a purpose to the sexualizing of women in Dragon Ball. Because it's funny. With Master Roshi, he's just a perv and he's funny. Goku is an idiot kid and an idiot teenager and an idiot adult, and it's funny. Because anyone who watches that anime knows it's not about that whatsoever. Your favorite character is not the hot one. Your favorite character is the hero, or the jaded hero, Vegeta, or the bad guys. So I don't know. That's interesting. I'd be curious too. Because even in my favorite anime, Death Note, we have one girl who is sexualized like that. And she's just in love with light. Like, there's nothing else to her character than being in love with light. So it was a very significant art style choice in this movie to not hypersexualize these girls.
Yeah, it's a really great testament of you can show nudity in your animated movie, but instead of it being this funny thing or dopamine rush or horny thing, it's this more visceral characterization of the world and ultimately just more tasteful. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Because I love Misa Misa from Death Note. I love her as a character. I love that she's a simp. I love that she's just all over light. It's funny, and I do have a romantic bone in my body. So, like the fangirl in me is like, oh, whatever. I love it. But here it just feels so like raw. It was good. It was good. I also loved the Tetsuo mass, I guess I could call it. That was insane. That looked really cool. Maybe it was like a kaiju moment for me happening there with him transforming and just all his organs and muscles and whatnot were coming out of him. I don't know. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, the visual language there is on a completely different level. And I love this kind of symbolic representation of becoming bigger than yourself, and feels very forward thinking and what would later take major prominence in Japan and all across humanity in the internet. Because if you let it happen, your life online can be many times bigger than your physical life. So more of just this emphasis on the effects of technology.
I want to bring up my favorite part, which is when they're being held in the jail cell and there's this guy who decides to drop a bomb and scream something about like long live the revolution or something, and then everybody's screaming at him and they're backing up and it doesn't go off and he gets the shit beat out of him. That was just pure good fun comedy for a pretty serious film. And we don't have a lot of that going on here. So I like that break and getting a good laugh out of me, because I think after he gets the shit beat out of him, there's one guy in there that says, hey, if you want to die, you can just hang yourself or something. You don't have to take the rest of us with you. And it was so funny.
Yeah, that was also a crazy scene, just like the Tetsuo mass, where we just had this crazy level of like movement in the screen. All these people within that scene, and then, him was all the gushing and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Like, this animation's on a whole nother level, even with that scene. And nothing happens here. It's just a comical relief, really, to show us the craziness that's going on in this world. And I guess the last thing I want to mention is the score. It's very good. It's super eerie, and it's put at the most perfect places. Even throughout some of the transitions, we have these like gongs or drums. I don't really know what they are, but they just add to this like destruction and desperation that we have going on in the movie. It's really good. And I think my favorite mix was when he was having those weird dreams. I guess they weren't really dreams. It was the other ESP Frankenstein children messing with him, but we didn't realize it yet. And there's just this mix of sounds and I think even voices, and it just sounded super cool.
Yeah, Tetsuo's theme song and all the sounds around him were really neat.
Yeah.
Totally. I heard a lot of Naruto in this.
Really?
Yes. Lots and lots of Naruto came out of this. All right, man. Well, thank you for watching Akira with me and talking about it here today.
You're welcome.
Do you have a budget guess for this 1988 film?
I don't know. I'm going with 2 million. I would even go less. I didn't look at Katsuhiro's previous work. I probably should have and hinted if this is an earlier work or not. But animation films always trip me up. I don't know. Especially older animation.
Yeah, there was a time period where people didn't want to spend money, lots of money on animated films because they didn't think it made money. But at the same time, like I think the first Lion King made $1 billion or...
Oh, shit.
So there's, not completely sure, but of course now we know today, Mario broke $1 billion. Many Avengers films, Marvel films have broken $1 billion. They're animated.
They're animated?
But it says here that Akira cost $5.7 million.
Okay.
And went on to make $49 million.
Ooh, that's awesome.
And over on Letterboxd with 697,000 people, they weighed in at a 4.3.
That's a little high.
I will say there's this strange fandom around Akira and how they think it's the greatest thing ever made. It reminds me of a Citizen Kane kind of thing where that pioneering nature of your thing, the thing that makes you tick must be the greatest thing ever made.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I can guarantee you the manga's better than the movie. Even though the animation is awesome, it does a massive disservice to itself by sacrificing its character and characterization and dialogue.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's other moving parts to a film, especially an animated film, than its animation. If I could rate it for animation alone, I would give it a 5 out of 5, of course. But I think I'm sticking with a 2.5 or a 3. Maybe it requires a rewatch so I can understand it a little bit better. That would bump that up to a 3. But that's probably where I'm comfortable staying.
Yeah, I'm leaning on a 3 as well. I was leaning in between the two, but I think a 3 will do because of my love for animation in the supremely fun Amoeba Dichotomy. But yeah, man, thank you for talking about this movie here today, and thank you guys for listening to this episode of The Filmistines. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Remember, we post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday on patreon.com/Filmistines, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube. Remember to leave nice comments, thoughts, and ideas on our Patreon as well. Come request a movie, come right in, come subscribe for $1. We appreciate all the support. But until next time, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of The Filmistines. Thanks for tuning in and joining us on our cinematic journey. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some new insights and perspectives in the world of movies. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform, especially Patreon at patreon.com/Filmistines. And follow us on social media for more film-related content. We love hearing from our listeners, so if you have any feedback, suggestions, movie recommendations, or book recommendations, please feel free to reach out to us. Until next time, keep watching and keep loving the magic of movies. This is The Filmistines, signing off.